Hello and welcome back to the Decaf Bubble podcast with me, Abby. Happy New Year, happy 2026. I really hope that you had a beautiful season of festivities, whatever you celebrated. And I'm very excited to be kicking off a brand new season of the Decaf Bubble podcast today. So from here on out, for the foreseeable future, I am going to be sharing an episode every Sunday, and kind of much like we've already been doing, but if you're new here, we are going to be talking about creativity, art, beauty, and how living a cyclical, pleasure-based life can help us commit to our creative path and unlock sustainable and healthy productivity. Because one of the key principles in this Decaf Bubble universe is that creativity is natural, it's inherent to who we are, and we just need to create beautiful conditions that help that natural creativity to thrive. So we're right in the middle of winter right now in the UK, where I am. I live in London, and so that is kind of affecting everything, that is colouring everything. And if you know me, you already know that I love to connect with the seasons. I love to live in a cyclical way, both in how I relate to the seasons, how I relate to the seasons of my creativity, and the seasons in my body as a woman. And so, of course, being in the middle of winter, that is colouring everything. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about how I romanticize this specific time of year, post-Christmas, January, February, arguably the hardest time of the year in the northern hemisphere, at least, to romanticize. Because at least in the UK, I know like everybody has this narrative about January that it's super depressing, and Christmas is over, you've spent all your money, the weather is bleak, and there's no fairy lights up in the streets anymore, and we've just got 2 months of winter until spring, shows up and everyone starts to have something to be happy about. That's kind of the pervasive narrative in the UK. We even have this thing called Blue Monday. I don't know if anyone has that in the rest of the world, but it's like the third Monday of the year, and it's supposed to be like the most statistically depressing day of the year. And okay, I'm kind of chuckling and laughing about it, but I think, it really is like a slippery slope at this time of year to fall into that narrative and be like sucked into it. And I really don't want, if you know me, I don't like subscribing to that narrative. I believe that all seasons have a purpose, and they have their own unique quality and their own unique energy and beauty. But winter is probably the most misunderstood season. And it is the most tough and harsh of conditions, at least physically, on the body. So I believe that it takes some extra creativity, some extra thinking and relating to the season to actually enjoy it. And then that's how we start to unlock some of the gifts and the beauty of the season. So in this episode, I am going to be talking about 5 ways that I'm romanticizing January like a diva. And the reason I'm romanticizing January like a diva is because diva is my word for 2026. It's the energy that I'm cultivating for myself, in my business, and just in general. I've always had a strong inner diva. It's always an archetype that I have related to and worked with myself. But this is the year where I'm really going to allow her to step forward and shine. So I'm super excited of how the diva archetype is going to be infusing, what I share on this podcast and what I teach in the bubble, and everything is just getting a whole diva rebrand. So I'm curious if you have a word of the year. Is that something you do? If you do, let me know, because I love hearing people's words and phrases for the year. So let's get into how I'm romanticizing January which sounds like such an oxymoron, because at least in the UK, everyone just slags off January so bad. And like, I'm really starting to appreciate January. I sent an email out recently talking about, I kind of love the feeling of contrast in January from how December feels. Like the December is just such a busy, indulgent, like high socializing time, and so there's something already about January which is very aesthetic, not aesthetic but aesthetic. Like it's more stripped back and more simple and like less of everything, like, and it kind of, it's like the tree is finally bare and we get to tend to the bones, you know. So anyway, how I'm romanticizing January like a diva. Point number 1, romanticize the cleanse. So see this time as an opportunity to cleanse. As I said, December is so intense. There's so much of other people's energies, like whether it's spending time with your family, like absorbing all of the kind of like intensity of family dynamics and tradition, and like all of the ways that you kind of can regress into your past selves at that time of year because of the tradition and because of all of the family stuff. So allow January to purify your energy, like do energy work. I love Qigong, like I've been doing a lot of Qigong. Anything that like cleanses you, your spirit, your being, like declutter, organizing, all of that kind of stuff. And one thing that gives me so much joy at this time of year is being really extra with my like self-care rituals. So taking a long shower, like doing all the steps, all the exfoliating, using body moisturizer, all of that, like just really extra stuff. And this connects back to the diva, because the diva is so extra, you know, she's high maintenance, she's got a lot of like steps and routines, and there's something about taking extra time over your self-care at this time of year that is particularly uplifting and like nourishing, and just, you know, it's like you might not be going out much, but you can still dress up and smell good and feel good in your body. And like, you know, in the words of Celine Dion, I do it for myself. That is the mantra for January. So that's number 1, romanticizing the cleanse. Number 2 is romanticize your winter rituals. So if you have ever taken one of my courses, if you're in the bubble community, if you've even listened to this podcast before, you might have heard me talking about the aesthetic pleasure ritual, which is a key practice in the Decaf Bubble universe. The aesthetic pleasure ritual is a ritual that is specifically designed and intended to connect you with beauty, pleasure, and your own artistic and aesthetic sensibilities. And so I really believe aesthetic pleasure rituals are so important to build into our daily life, and also to build into our seasonal and cyclical living, because they are really such a form of nourishment. And aesthetic pleasure rituals can be so simple. They can be connected with something really practical, but you're adding an element that turns it into something beautiful or pleasurable. So a couple of examples of that might be arriving somewhere early so that you have 20 extra minutes to sit and enjoy your coffee and read some poetry, for example. Or maybe you turn teeth brushing time into an aesthetic pleasure ritual by like turning off the light and lighting a candle. That's something that I often do. Anything that turns normal daily life into a work of art, into beauty. There's something of the diva in this. You know, the diva is notorious for having rituals and routines that she always sticks to, and things that she's very specific and very intentional about, and how she likes things to be. And so giving myself permission over winter to be very particular and detail orientated on, the little things, because these things add up and they can change our mood so much. Having the perfect gold rimmed china teacup for your tea in the morning, or having, the perfect notebook with cream pages and black fountain pen to write your daily chores list with, and just all of that stuff, if you're anything like me, elevates your quality of life by 10 million%. So that is number 2, romanticize your winter rituals. Point number 3 is romanticize rest. So, of course, winter is the season where we are meant to focus much more internally. We are meant to hibernate. We are meant to slow down and really take care of ourselves and get through the season with more food, more rest. So instead of feeling guilty for resting, go fully into it. This is what I like to do. I like to romanticize the rest. If I'm gonna have a lazy day, if I'm gonna have a fully couch potato situation, just embrace it, romanticize it, be a diva about it. Dress up in your comfiest loungewear, light a candle, make the atmosphere nice. Because if we don't do that, then we end up kind of scrolling and stealing the rest in other ways that aren't actually that restful. So I always just think, go into it so wholeheartedly, and remember that how we rest, how we winter, is setting us up for the rest of the year. We spoke about this last month in the bubble community. The theme for last month was wintering. And I taught a class on wintering, and one of the things I was talking about is this idea that how we winter sets us up for the rest of the year. So if we try and burn all of our energy in winter, we actually rob that energy from the rest of the year. This applies in the menstrual cycle too. If we burn all of our physical energy when we're on our period, on our bleed, then we can really screw ourselves hormonally for the rest of the month. So it's very wise and very pertinent to rest in winter or on your bleed, because then for the rest of the month you're going to reap so much more energy that you conserved and saved and restored during winter, because that's what it's designed for. So yeah, number 3 is romanticize rest and just enjoy it. Full permission to be a lazy, fabulous diva on the couch, enjoying her snacks and enjoying her Netflix or whatever it is that's most restful to you. Number 4 is romanticize the visioning process. So January is the start of the year, and it's such a magical time for planting seeds, setting goals, and of course manifesting, if you're into that. So I love to harness this time of the year. I love to tap into that collective energy of new beginnings. However, I do believe that we need a bit of an update and a refinement of how we're relating to the start of the year, at least in the mainstream. I think the mainstream idea of New Year visioning, whatever, is you set a bunch of goals, you create a very strict, unrealistic regime for yourself, and then you kind of fizzle out before January is even over. And I guess I see people doing that, and I think we need to refine how we understand the visioning process. And I believe that winter is the perfect time for visioning. It's the time where we turn inward. It's the time when there is less daylight, so there's literally less time for going out and about and tending the farm or whatever, like biologically. It's much more about coming into the internal world and into our internal space and reflecting and thinking about what we actually want and connecting with the vision, connecting with the void space of where all of the new ideas come from. So my suggestion, my invitation to you is, in order to truly get into that visioning process, don't give yourself the deadline of the 1st of January. Actually allow the visioning process to spread out throughout winter. Meaning that you are taking your time. You're not just creating a bunch of goals just for the sake of it, but you're actually taking time to be with yourself, get into that still, quiet space that winter provides us with, and then just seeing what naturally bubbles up, like what comes up as things that you want to create, things that you desires that you want to manifest. So take your time with that stuff, like be the diva. You can't rush magic. Be the diva in her cocoon. Like take the whole of winter to really get ready, lay the groundwork, and create a vision that is sustainable and really like connected to who you truly are and to your soul. And then it's just going to be so much more fun to actually action it and implement it throughout the rest of the year. This month in the Bubble, which is the online community that I run for artists, we are exploring the theme of vision. So we're actually taking the whole of January just to unpack what vision even is. And for me, I believe it's such an important energy tool for artists, for creatives, for entrepreneurs. Are we spending enough time really connecting with our vision? And do you have a sense of what your vision is, what you're working towards? Because the truth is, everybody who's a creative, who's an artist, who's an entrepreneur is also a visionary. So we have this visionary inside of us. And I think a lot of the time we kind of allow that visionary to get squashed, and we put all of the practicalities on top, and we say, okay, what I'd really like is this in the back of my mind, but I'm going to prioritize this thing that feels more realistic, or that other people aren't going to be shocked, or, I'm not going to rock the boat. And I think we do ourselves a massive disservice by disconnecting from our true inner visionary. So we're going to be unpacking the archetype of the visionary and really what is vision. How can we connect with vision? How can we receive it? Once we've connected with that vision, how do we hold the vision? How do we stay connected to it to the point where we can actually realize that vision? And we're also going to be exploring how to bring others into our vision, how to collaborate with other visionaries. Collaborating and sharing vision is also such a complicated part of being an artist, as I'm sure you already have experienced. So that's what we're going to be exploring this month in the Bubble. We have a class that is going to be on the 20th of January. That's when I'm going to be teaching all of my thoughts, philosophies around the visionary and how to connect with your vision, hold your vision, and get it to the point of realization. And then on the 26th of January, I'm leading a workshop where I am going to lead you through my process for visioning. And I use this process before every project I start. I use it for every desire that I want to create into my reality. This process is so cool. I'm going to be talking more about it on the podcast, but in this workshop, we're going to be going through it in detail, and I highly recommend that you join us. If you're not already in the Bubble, this is a great time to join because there is currently a 7-day free trial, which that is going to be only for the month of January. So if you're into manifesting, vision boards, setting New Year's goals and New Year's resolutions, come along to this class and this workshop, and I guarantee that you will deepen your understanding of how to do this in a way that's actually going to work and it's actually going to make 2026 your year of creative realization. So that is point number 4. We're romanticizing the visioning process. We're not rushing. We're taking our sweet time like a diva to really be intentional, planting the seeds for the year ahead. And yeah, you can't rush the magic. So take your time and enjoy that visioning. And finally, point number 5 for how to romanticize January is romanticize the January blues. So this might sound a little bit contradictory because I've been talking about how to avoid the January blues, but I read this thing in a book called Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott, and it really changed my life. So, and I talk about this quite a lot. She talked about deciding to see things in your life, see experiences aesthetically instead of morally. So seeing something aesthetically means appreciating the aesthetic qualities rather than seeing it morally, which is saying it's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong. And she talks about this example of like, if you're feeling sad, you could tell yourself it's bad to feel sad, it's wrong, it's depressing, or you could put the judgment aside and simply just experience it. Experience it like the aesthete, the artist that you are. So again, if you do feel some January blues, that is okay, and maybe it's part of having a full spectrum of life. Like maybe winter gets to be a bit bleak sometimes and it gets to be a bit depressing, and we can just be a diva and romanticize it and maybe put on a film noir movie set in Paris, or journal out your negative thoughts and feelings. Maybe allow yourself to just stare at the sky moodily and just be in your experience fully. I think the thing that actually makes us depressed is filling that emptiness with like overstimulating social media blah and noise, instead of just like letting ourselves feel and be. And I'm kind of biased at the moment because I took December off from social media, and it really reminded me like how clean my experience can be when I'm not super distracted and comparing myself to what everybody else is doing on social media. That can easily lead us to being like, oh, look at that person's amazing life, and comparing our lives unfavorably, right? So if you do know that you're a bit prone to getting the January blues, why don't you give yourself the gift of taking time away from social media, and like, if you do feel sad, if you do feel bored, like allowing that empty space, because that really is what winter is all about, is that emptiness, that void space. That is the beginning of all creation. That is like the cocoon where the butterfly is born. But you can't skip the part where it's dark and you don't know what's going on and all of that kind of thing. So rather than resisting it, let's just romanticize it. In other words, let's just let it be what it is and let ourselves be who we are in that experience without resistance. So I have a couple more things to recommend. If you haven't already, I really recommend reading the book Wintering by Catherine May. It's a beautiful book about connecting with winter, not just the season of winter, but the winters of our life, like when things are hard, when things are difficult, when we need to withdraw from life. That's such a beautiful book, and it also inspired the theme last month in the bubble. We did a whole workshop on wintering, and there were so many good tips and rituals and ideas for wintering and romanticizing winter that were shared in that workshop. So check out the bubble. It's on a 7-day free trial until the end of January. You can rewatch that workshop and you can join us live for the class on the 20th of January, which is called Clarifying Your Vision, and then the workshop on the 26th, which is called Manifesting Your Vision. They're going to be so good. And if you have creative goals, things that you want to create this year, I think the number one gift that you can give yourself is a community to support you, a place where you can share what you're working on in the work in progress circles. You can receive accountability and just basically feel like you have a community of artists, creatives, visionaries, entrepreneurs who are also pursuing their goals. It makes all the difference. So I strongly and warmly invite you to join us in the bubble. I hope this episode has inspired you for January, for how to romanticize this time of year. And I am going to be releasing some more episodes this month about more ways that you can connect with your vision and really harness this magical time of year. All right, sending you so much love. Bye.